Prime Minister Mark Carney is meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump this hour. The two leaders are inside the White House right now. We are covering all the angles for you, and we will have interviews with key stakeholders. Trump and Carney are scheduled to be in a working luncheon this hour. But before that, the pair spoke to the media in the Oval Office, and the Prime Minister got clear about the relationship between the U.S. and Canada.
We are the second largest trading partner of the United States. We do a lot of trade going across the border where we're cooperating, first thing. Secondly, we are the largest foreign investor in the United States. $500 billion in the last 5 years alone, probably $8 trillion in the next 5 years if we get the agreement that we expect to get. Thirdly, there are areas, as the President just said, where conflict, maybe not so much conflict, we compete. There are areas where we compete, and it's in those areas where we have to come to an agreement that works. But there are more areas where we are stronger together, and that's what we're focused on. And we're going to get the right deal for America, right deal, obviously, from my perspective, for Canada.
We have reporters watching this trip on both sides of the border. Our Katie Simpson is tracking the visit from the White House, and Karina Roman is in our nation's capital for the very latest. All right, so let's go first to Katie. She joins us live outside the White House. So, Katie, what did we learn from that meeting?
Well, we certainly seem to be, Donald Trump set the expectation that there could be something positive for Canada coming out of this. Mark Carney and the Canadian delegation arriving here amidst this ongoing battle to try and get some tariff relief. Sources speaking to CBC News leading up to this trip had sort of set the expectation that it was possible there could be some lowering of certain tariffs, particularly around steel. But no one was willing to tell us that, that was a for sure thing because Donald Trump is so unpredictable. We just played some clips there. That's the show part of this visit. Now the leaders are going to get down to the actual working part of this visit, holding that lunch. And, Donald Trump suggesting Canada could walk away with something that could be very positive here. Certainly Canada was coming into this moment really trying to get some certainty, some clarity, and some relief on these punishing tariffs that have been applied across a broad sector of the Canadian economy, causing so much chaos and so much trouble when it comes to, making investments and protecting jobs and all of those things that Canadians are so deeply concerned about. Have a listen to how President Donald Trump spoke about this moment and what it is perhaps that Canada might get a chance to walk away with here.
Mr. Carney leaving Washington with a deal on tariffs.
I think they're going to be very happy. We have a lot of things that we're working on that people don't talk about. They talk about, competitiveness. She's a very competitive person. And they talk about things that we don't necessarily agree on. But I think they're going to walk away very happy. I think so.
So other big takeaways from that meeting inside there, U.S. President Donald Trump suggesting he is committed to renegotiating the USMCA, or CUSMA, as we call it in Canada. However, he said he'd be willing to go other routes as well. He again spoke about his commitment to tariffs. That is something that is not unexpected. In other trade deals he's reached with other countries, there still are some baseline tariffs that remain. And, inside the room, it seemed that there was an ease between these leaders. Donald Trump joking with Mark Carney, speaking very positively toward him. But, even with all of those compliments, Mark Carney being complimentary to Donald Trump as well, even with those positive exchanges, those Canadian business leaders, Canadian workers, they want to see something concrete come out of this. And while having a positive relationship is certainly something that helps moves things forward, there's got to be something from that momentum that results in some sort of tangible outcome. And that's what Canada is trying to nail down in that room right now.
Yeah, it's interesting just, in terms of the language. The president says we're in natural conflict, and Mark Carney says, well, we're competing, we're competitors. It's not a conflict necessarily. But the president saying, when asked about some kind of deal or tariff relief, he said, the people of Canada will love us again. So, Katie, I guess that's what the people of Canada will be looking for. What should we be watching for next?
And on that point, before we get to that, on that point there, Andrew, Donald Trump did something in there that he always does. He sort of says so many different things that might seem in conflict with one another, and everyone can sort of read into it whatever you choose to read into it, because Donald Trump just says so much. He fills so much of the space, and sometimes his statements tend to contradict one another. In that room, we heard about, the natural conflict. He talked about how Canada and the United States naturally compete with one another, particularly when it comes to the auto sector and auto jobs. And that's something that the president has been very vocal about. He has openly said he wants to see auto jobs in Canada move to the United States. He also says he wants to see auto jobs in Mexico move to the United States. He's blamed previous American presidents for allowing jobs that were once in America move to neighboring countries, and really sort of has that was a core part of why he wanted to renegotiate the original NAFTA. That was a big part of that. And so Donald Trump saying, okay, on one hand, we have a great relationship. I think, Mark Carney is going to walk away with something that's going to make Canadians like us again, something very positive, suggesting there. At the same time, he gave a nod to the natural conflict that he sort of describes as the competition between countries competing for jobs, for good working class jobs that help fuel these economy and grow these economies. So there's that. What to watch for next? We are expecting Dominic LeBlanc, who is the minister leading the trade negotiations for Canada. He's going to be speaking a little bit later this afternoon from the Canadian Embassy. A news release went out about that a short time ago. So I believe that's happening around 2:45 Eastern. I wouldn't be surprised if things are delayed, though, because on a big day like this, things always end up getting delayed, so don't necessarily be surprised. But at some point, we're going to see, Andrew, where we're going to be standing here, we're going to see Carney and the delegation. We're expecting them to come out this way, and then they'll head on back out this way. And hopefully we'll get some sort of word on what perhaps it is that Donald Trump keeps teasing about that could make Canada very happy.
It was interesting, Katie, some people say, is he going to trot out the 51st state rhetoric again? He did, Carney started to speak, and then Trump kind of said, you were going to talk about the merger of Canada and the U.S., but it was done to be fair, very lightheartedly. It was not, he knew that he wasn't serious. In other moments when he was speaking to generals or sometimes online, he has been serious. He wasn't serious in that moment. And the other thing that I thought maybe is a little bit different than before, you tell me, Katie, you watch much more closely than I do. When it came to, we don't want to make cars in Canada, but we want Canada to do well. It was interesting that he kind of added that. So I don't know if that's a softening or of a hint that maybe he kind of thinks of the Canadian economy doing well as something that is also desirable for the U.S., for Canada, for everybody.
Well, it generally depends on who was in the president's ear last and who sort of is talking to him about, what it is that can help the United States. This is an America First policy. It's what Donald Trump ran on and what he was elected to do. So basically, essentially, what Donald Trump is doing and what he has done for almost a year now, we're getting close to, it's 1 year since the election, but he came to office in January. But we're getting into, months and months of Donald Trump, going ahead with the policies that he campaigned on, tariffs being a big one, America First being a big one, pursuing the American agenda with, not necessarily as much concern as administrations past might have had for neighbors and allies. So, but in this moment, what really stands out is the tone and the language is positive. Donald Trump teasing that there's something that Canada could walk away from in this moment, that could, sort of come out with something tangible here. Again, until we actually get something specific from the White House, until we see something on paper or sort of, a plan of action, it's words can be one thing, but, actual orders that will change policies, it's another thing. So that really is the sort of crunchy bit of this moment. Overall, the tone seemed very positive. They were joking with one another. The 51st state stuff, Donald Trump will make that joke. I know that many in our Canadian audience will be watching that, and they get so angry. They find it demoralizing. They find it demeaning. And my email explodes every time from viewers every time sort of we mention it in a story, because we do mention it when it happens down
we
here.
Report
we
on
think
it.
it's important. Yeah, we think it's important for our viewers to hear. So it's very Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole, it can be, many things can be true all at once. And it's until we actually see something tangible, something on paper, something sort of specific laid out as to what it's going to be, it remains the great unknown.
And I mean, just to finish on all of that, I've seen him do it and say it, and he kind of means it in kind of as a negotiating tool, or he's serious. In this moment, I think he was joking around. We'll find the clip, we'll play the clip later and let people assess for themselves. But the kind of tone of it this time seemed a little lighter than other times. That's just...
It didn't seem like he was trying to demean or put Mark Carney down. And in other situations, sometimes when that phrase has been used, it was meant as sort of a push down and insult.
Exactly. All right, Katie, thank you. The CBC's Katie Simpson outside the White House.